The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is easily one of the most popular Zelda games in the series, and for good reason. In a lot of ways, it's the quintessential Zelda experience. Twilight Princess has pretty much everything you would expect from a Zelda game. It's the story of a boy leaving his home on a great adventure, there's a massive open world to explore, tons of dungeons filled with puzzles, and some really cool gadgets. Twilight Princess is also the edgy teenager of Zelda games. Some consider this graphical style to be the most realistic in the series, even when this thing exists. And pretty much every frame of this game looks like an Evanescence album cover. Personally, I think this game is downright goofy. But that's not a bad thing. I think goofy games are great. And out of every single Zelda game out there, Twilight Princess has to be the weirdest of the bunch. So maybe you're just getting into the series and looking for the next big adventure, or maybe like me, you grew up with Twilight Princess and came for the nostalgia. Either way, I hope you enjoy my review of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Right off the bat, I want to talk about how much I love the overall feel of Twilight Princess. I know it gets said time and time again, but the direction of this game feels much more mature than past Zelda titles. After the fun and colorful Wind Waker, fans were craving a more dark and gritty Zelda experience, and Twilight Princess definitely stepped up to the plate. The story is one of my favorites throughout the whole series because while it has those quirky moments we've always loved from Zelda, it seems to take itself much more seriously. There are some very interesting characters introduced in this game that have real depth to them, and it felt like the first time in the series that I was actually invested in the side characters. Even the locals of Link's hometown, who are typically just background NPCs, seem to have their own character arcs and personalities, which is perfect for a game that wants you to connect on a deeper level with the world. This is also by far the best Princess Zelda in this series for how intriguing her character actually is. Rather than some damsel in distress with no personality, her character is shrouded in mystery and a lot more interesting. I think this game also has my favorite iteration of Ganondorf. Although he isn't a huge part of the overall story, he still plays an important role in connecting all the dots later on, plus he's actually intimidating this time around. Twilight Princess's main villain Zant is also a pretty terrifying antagonist, but how could I forget Link's follower in Twilight Princess, Midna? While she shares a ton of annoying traits with the past Zelda followers like Navi, this is the first time I actually cared about a follower. Midna is super sassy and actually pretty funny. I love her relationship with Link, and it always felt like a much deeper bond than you would expect. Plus, she probably has the most interesting plotline of any character in the game, so she gets the okay from me. I feel like I'm rambling a bit, so let's talk about the gameplay itself. As I mentioned before, this is the most Zelda-esque that a game can get. It checks pretty much every box that has become a Zelda staple. The overworld this time around is really fun to explore. As usual, there are tons of hidden secrets at every corner, whether you're on land, in the sky, or underwater. Right out of the gate, you're given your very own horse, which makes traveling around feel much faster, and a lot less like rolling around a million times for no reason. The cities and villages themselves are so filled with life, especially when you're walking down a narrow alleyway of Castletown. There are a bunch of mini-games that you can find at different shops, and each location tells its own story. The dungeon locations in this game are definitely some of my favorites in the whole series, like the massive city above the clouds or the mansion in the snowy mountains. The puzzles and enemy encounters are still pretty surface level, as you would expect from these past Zelda games, which is a bit disappointing, but at the end of the day, it's not like we're playing Dark Souls or anything. I will say that there are a ton of really cool boss fights in this game, which utilize a lot of creative ideas. There's this one where you have to use a giant Beyblade to reach the top of this big tower, which is pretty sick. And there's another one where you have to fight this guy's wife to restore their love, which is pretty weird. Oh, that's another thing. The items in this game are some of the most unique ideas out of any Zelda title. You can get this giant ball and chain to throw at enemies, which I always thought was badass, plus there's a fishing rod, double claw shots, and I think this is the first Zelda game to have bomb arrows. I always liked these items and learning the different uses for them, and you can really see the humble beginnings of some of the ideas for when Breath of the Wild finally released. But again, after covering all of that, this game is still pretty much just Zelda for big kids. The biggest addition that is brand new to the series is Link's ability to turn into a furry. Yup, everyone get out your favorite Walmart werewolf t-shirt, Link can transform into a giant dog. I have a lot of problems with the wolf sections in Twilight Princess. I can admit that a lot of the concepts they were trying out were pretty groundbreaking at the time, like the dashing parkour stuff, plus the wolf combat has some cool ideas built in there, but these sections also kill the pacing of the game entirely. Right when you start feeling totally invested in the story again, they always perfectly time these puzzles to kill the whole vibe. Running around collecting shiny orbs is fun and all, but I found myself constantly wishing to go back to Link's regular form to keep the story moving. On a brighter note though, being able to talk to the different animals across Hyrule as the wolf form is pretty genius. It makes encountering these animals later on as a human pretty entertaining. And finally, let's talk about the soundtrack. I have to admit, this is one of my favorite Zelda soundtracks out of the whole series. So many of the songs are really dark and gloomy, but they really set a tone for the game that I think is kind of unmatched. There are some really beautiful piano pieces that play during dramatic scenes that will just fill you with emotion. A lot of the huge orchestral themes use so many leitmotifs from past Zelda titles, and listening to these tracks is nothing less than epic. So for Zelda fans who always wanted a game in the series that takes itself much more seriously, Twilight Princess is probably the game for you. I can't see Nintendo taking the series in this direction again for at least a while, which I don't think is a bad thing because it makes Twilight Princess feel a lot more special. I've always enjoyed the more colorful and wacky Zelda titles, but going back and replaying Twilight Princess made me appreciate the level of storytelling they were striving for. While the series has been heading for a less linear experience in recent years, I do hope that one day we see strong storytelling like this again. As for my own score, I'm going to give Twilight Princess a 7 out of 10. There are so many areas where this game shows huge potential, but it felt like these ambitious ideas were just barely out of reach. Also, Nintendo, please put Twilight Princess on Switch. Thanks. Hey guys, thanks a ton for watching. I made a promise to myself this year that I would review every single Zelda game out there, so make sure to subscribe to be there for the rest. So far, we have reviewed Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, Wind Waker, and now Twilight Princess, so we still have a long way to go. Which game in the series would you like to see me review next? Make sure to let me know down in the comments because I will actually be looking for your input. As always, keep gaming to the fullest, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See ya!